Welcome back to the Move IQ podcast, where we're bringing you everything to do with property. What are we chatting about today, Nicola?
Today we're talking about, as Phil would say, relocation, which is actually quite hard to say 3 times in a row. Have a couple of glasses of wine and then try and say
it. You just create a new game, a new drinking game.
But relocating is such a massive thing, like moving from one area to a completely different part of the country, or even a whole new country. Have you done that?
I have. So when I was 18, I moved from Devon, which is where I grew up, to London.
Big move.
Quite a big move. I know. I was like, as soon as I can get out, I'm out. Nothing gets Devon. I love Devon. I love to go back. But I was just like, bright lights, big city.
Yeah. How did that work for you?
I thought it was really good. And I'm still in London, like 16 years later.
Nice.
And I'm never leaving. So I think it's one of those, it's a big thing, isn't it? It's risky. You don't know if you're going to like it or not. That's why I think you do have to be quite open to a situation.
Yes.
And just go with it.
Yes.
And know that the world's got your back, kind of thing. Because that's always what I thought. And then what's the worst that happens? You go back to somewhere else, or you know, you head off somewhere else and go and explore somewhere new.
Yeah.
So I help people do this every single day of my life. So in London, so I help people mostly move from outside of the city, coming into London, and it's a completely new experience for them. Like, a lot of people are maybe moving from overseas and have never even visited London before, and so I'm there to kind of like hold their hand throughout the entire process. So we're known as relocation agents. If you're I help people buy properties, so you can be a buying agent, property finder, property sourcer if you're doing it for investors. So there's lots of different like umbrellas that it sits under. But basically just helping someone find a new home.
Yes, that's a cool job.
It's a very cool job. I absolutely love it. But I think in the UK, it's not a big thing. Like, you go to other countries like Australia, like the States, and you would normally employ a buying agent to help you buy a property. Whereas in the UK, we are using estate agents. Yeah. And I think a lot of people assume, so the estate agents are working for me, they're helping me find a home. But of course they're not. They're working for the vendor and for the landlord. Yeah. They're on their side trying to secure, I guess, not always, but the best deal they can possibly get for who they're representing. Their client is the vendor or the landlord. So you, as a buyer or a renter, are basically in the game on your own. And when you think about, you're buying the most expensive thing you're probably ever buying in your life.
Yes.
And we try and tackle it on our own. So I'm there to help the people.
I love that. So what would be sort of the first bit of advice that you would give for someone moving to a completely different location?
Completely new location. I think you've got to understand that location a little bit. And it's down to many factors. So when I sit down, first of all, and chat with someone, a lot of my job is managing people's expectations. Yeah. Because when you're moving to a new area, you don't necessarily know the you could have hot little markets in certain areas. Yeah. It's like, let me give an example. So I work a lot in London, and you can go to Notting Hill, right, and think, Notting Hill, it's fabulous. We all know it from the movie. It's going to be just like that. Yeah. And you can look online and see what's listed and be like, oh, hey, there's a house there. It's really reasonable. That's going to be a great shout. But actually, different streets can be so different from the next street. So it's having that person that's got local knowledge and to walk you around it and to decide, this is still a great area. It's a great postcode, but actually that might be the reason why this house is more affordable than other houses, because of something in the location, or it might be next to something, it might be next to a hospital. It's lots of different things that you've got to take into account. And I think the best way to do that is to familiarise yourself with an area. You're also obviously looking at factors like budget is a huge thing, because, we have a lot of people that are maybe coming from abroad and that they think, I want to be in that area and that area because my friends are in that area. Yeah. Okay, that's great. But what are your other must-haves? So this is the budget. This is how many bedrooms I want. And it's then up to me to kind of manage people's expectations, say, actually, if we were going to be in that area, this is realistically what you're going to get. We maybe will have to make some compromises somewhere. Yeah. Compromise is like my favourite word. It's not necessarily a bad word.
It's compromise.
Yes, there's always a compromise. However, whatever, I work with people with different budgets. Whatever someone's budget is, there is always a compromise. Right. Whether you're buying, whether you're renting. And I think you have to go into a transaction, into a deal, into a search, having that in your mind, that you are never going to tick 10 out of 10 boxes. Very, very rarely. If you tick 8, great. If you're renting, if you tick 5, brilliant.
That's such a satisfying job that I know that I would be utterly terrible at.
Well, I always think if I moved countries, because it's very different here in the UK, like we were talking about earlier as well. So in the States, you've got something called an MLS, which is a multi-listing system. So basically any agent can access what's on that multi-listing system. In the UK, you have to go and register with all the estate agents to have access to the properties.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess, you know, the online portals, for example, are trying to be our MLS system, which is brilliant because you can go online and see what's listed. You can get so much good data and information from the online portals. But what you're not getting is that kind of personal experience with an estate agent who are actually going to be the ones that are giving you the properties. So if you miss out on that, you're missing out on off-market deals. You're missing out on the agent actually knowing you as a client, as well, not a client, but as a potential tenant or buyer, and selling you in the best light to the landlord or to the vendor, which you always want to be on your side. Because if your estate agent's not on your side, you know, however much money you're putting down on something, I always think it comes down to being nice as well. If you're if you're not a nice person, who do you think they're pushing? It's probably not you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so we learned kind of the hard way of how to relocate. So, I mean, I moved from North London down to Surrey to go and move with my then boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
But he knew the area. That's where he was from. So that was all fine. And then when we were buying our first property, we were like, well, we can't afford anything around here. So let's see if we can go further out, see what we can find. At the time, we were living in Surrey, but I was working down in Brighton. So we were like, well, maybe if we find like a halfway point between Surrey and Brighton, something might be nice. I hear Horsham's nice.
Yeah.
Let's just have a look. So we drove down there and then we found like the first new build area that we could find. And we went, well, this looks all right. And then we viewed the show home and we bought the show home. Basically what happened.
Bought the show home. That's brilliant.
We bought the show.
That's like my dream.
It wasn't part of the plan. We just kind of went, well, this is nice. And then the woman went, well, you can afford this. And we went, well, we'll buy it then.
Well, we'll have it.
So we bought the show home. But we moved down without knowing anything about the area. We just went, well, I hear it's quite nice. Let's just move there. So we basically put an offer in. We bought the house. And then we started learning about Horsham. Luckily, it's a really lovely place. Yeah. But what we did learn is that there was no shops or anything that was walkable nearby. We were told that there was going to be some that was going to be built soon. But even though we've moved from that point, they still haven't built a shop. That's a story for another day. But we kind of had to learn as we went. And I remember the day we moved in, my in-laws came round for dinner to come and have a look at the house. And at the time we were stressed. There was boxes everywhere. And they were like, let's go out for dinner. I was like, yeah, okay. Turns out when you move in to certain areas in Horsham, certain times of the day, everything's shut. Didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
No idea.
That's why I moved to London.
So that was a lot of stress of trying to find somewhere to eat because we didn't know anything about the area at the time. But we found out the hard way. But now we've moved again since then, but we've stayed in Horsham because we've fallen in love with it. So now we know how it works. We know it inside out. We love the little town. We've now just moved to the south part of Horsham because we wanted to upsize because I then needed a drive because I work with cars. So I needed a drive for a lot of the cars that I drive, and I needed at home electric car charging, which I couldn't get in the previous house. And we were just like, well, let's just stay here. We don't have any family or any friends in this area. We just really liked
flexibility. Yeah.
We just really liked it there. So now I feel like we'll just go, well, we might as well just stay here now. It's quite nice.
I love that. You kind of tested it out, but you actually went through hardcore and bought something to test it out.
Yeah.
But you kind of fell in love with the property. And sometimes that is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, you can, and that's why I always say to people, view. Get out there and like view as many places as possible.
Well, we viewed one.
Oh, no way.
That was the only place we
committed. This is great. But I love stories like this.
We went,
well,
nice, we'll take this.
Yeah. And if sometimes you do, a lot of the time when I take out people to go and view properties, it's the first one they walk into. We'll go to see 10 others in the day. First one is just the winner. And the amount of times that happens is so funny. Did you find your experience stressful moving home? Because relocating for people, you know, there's so much going on, because I guess you've got to look at why do people relocate, right?
Yeah.
So is it for a job? Is it to be closer to family? Is it
to be further from family?
Yeah, potentially. There's a lot of different reasons that people might be moving. They might be downsizing. It might not necessarily be a positive situation. Like a lot of the time, it's a positive reason why you're moving, but sometimes, sadly, it's not. And there's all these other emotional factors that are going on, and starting a new job, moving kids to a new school. Like it's a lot to take in, and it's so overwhelming. But I think people just can't forget that hopefully should be an enjoyable experience, because they always say like moving home is constantly voted like the third most stressful thing to do in life. And it's like
what's
death,
number 1 and 2?
Death, divorce, moving house.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I would have thought moving house would have been higher than that.
Higher than death, divorce.
It's very stressful.
It is very stressful. But at the same time, I do think don't let go of that fun, because wherever you're moving, for whatever reason, I love moving house. You might think I'm crazy.
You are crazy.
I love moving house. I would move house every 2 years if I could, because I'm like, this is a new chapter. It's a new start. It's fresh. Everything's fresh. You can set up your new life.
Oh, right. I need to now hear from other people to see if you're on the same wavelength as Lexie, because I'm absolutely not. Would you rather move house every 2 years or stay in a nice place and then slowly do it up over time?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what people are saying on that as well. For sure. But I also like that you get rid of all your stuff every time you move. You know how much you accumulate.
Yeah.
And then you're like, great, I've had a massive
got more
clear
than I
out.
thought you did. Yeah. It's just so much stuff.
It is so much.
But I think for us, it was reasonably easy because we don't have kids. But I think for friends of mine and for family members of stuff that have tried to move and they do have kids, that's where it becomes tricky. I mean, at the moment, my sister-in-law's just moved 5 minutes around the corner. So now we actually have family nearby because they also fell in love with
Port End. Yeah.
But they've got, my nephew's like 1.5 years. So it's not like a big drama for him. But I think when you've got kids at school, then it makes it quite tricky for them because they've then got to find new friends, settle into a new place. You've then got to find local clubs and that kind of thing. That can be a really stressful thing.
Yeah. But I think that's a really good place to start when you've got past that stage of actually, we just did a whole episode on moving home and how to hopefully make that less stressful, particularly when you're moving with pets and things. So that's a great listen if you are moving with pets. But like you say, when you're moving with children and you're setting up this whole new life, it's once you've got settled, it's to go and register with things like that. And you will find that a lot of places, particularly if you're moving into like a new build development like you did, people have WhatsApp groups. Yeah. And I think that is so useful. The amount of my friends that live in developments. No, you're like,
no, not for me. No, not for me. I joined the local WhatsApp group, but
you were like, but I left just as quickly.
It was exhausting. And it was someone would just ask one question and then 20 people would reply, sorry, I can't help you. If you can't help, then just don't reply. It's just so straightforward.
We need group chats with rules.
Yes, that's what we need to do.
And also going and familiarising yourself with the local places. Where is this local coffee shop? What is the walk to school going to look like? What is my commute going to look like?
Commutes
is massive. And again, I was out with a client yesterday and we found a lovely place that was maybe a 15-minute walk from a tube station. And because they loved the place so much, everyone's kind of really excited about it. Yeah. And I was like, we'll finish up here, go and do the journey. Because it's one thing looking at it on a map and being like, it's going to take me 20 minutes, but actually doing that journey, are you going to want to walk that like 15 minutes in the rain every day?
Yeah, and then it's partly along a B road. There's no pavement.
Yeah, exactly. Go and test it out. And also, I always think you've got to think of a plan B for getting around. Sometimes what happens if the trains aren't working? Yeah. What do you do? Yeah. What's your plan B route to get to where you need to go?
Yeah, see, that's also something that we had to learn the hard way because we were like, Horsham Station, we can just jump on the train to Victoria.
Yeah.
Turns out, Horsham Station, those particular trains take a long time to get to Victoria. So for us, it's easier to drive an extra 20 minutes to go to a different train station to then get faster trains into London. It's way quicker.
Well, there you go.
That was, and they had to test it
again, and that's almost like one of those little compromises that actually to get into where you need to go quicker, you might have to take a different route, which maybe isn't so easy as just sitting. It depends. People have different preferences, don't they?
Yeah, and parking is important, I think, for us.
For your situation, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, sometimes when I move a lot of people in London, no one's moving with a car. So that becomes completely irrelevant. Almost.
Of course. Yeah.
But I always think it's having those clear lists and ruling out, like you said at the very beginning, those things that you must have, and there's things that they're a nice to have. It's a big plus as you get there.
Yeah.
So whenever I chat with my clients, I'm always like, area, how many bedrooms do you need, like, or size of the property, the price that you want to pay, the date that you want to move in. It can be a big thing when you're renting, particularly because you don't want to be looking too soon or too late or leaving yourself not enough time. And then it comes down what furniture you want. Again, particularly when we're talking about renting, whether you are willing, again, people think all the time, I'll be flexible, I'll take something unfurnished. But actually, when you break down how much furniture is going to cost you to put into a property, that's another huge expense that you've got to think about on top. So actually, how flexible are you on that point? So, and then it comes down to all those other things. Schooling, have you got a pet? Do you need outside space? Is it just a nice to have? Do you need parking? Is it just a nice to have, or will you get a street permit?
Your local GP, your dentist,
those, and that
do your research.
Do your research. They are things that you, again, in my head, I always think area, property, that is your first thing to focus on. And then once you found something, that's when you start registering with GPs and dentists, because there's going to be someone around. Like, I wouldn't necessarily base a search on doing my pre-research first and being like, well, I'm not going to buy something there because I can't get into this GP that I want. But that's kind of, to me, like one of those secondary things that you would think about for sure. But other things like schooling, right? A lot of our schooling system in the UK, particularly getting into state schools and having certain catchment areas, can be so tricky and push prices up in those catchment areas. So that's always something to think about, and it can be so difficult because you've got to have an address before you can then almost be accepted into that school. So it's always like a catch-22.
And it's just finding different routines. Your whole life will become a whole new routine. And then you end up then falling into that rhythm of life. And then, I mean, if you're the kind of person that moves every 2 years, I mean, you might end up in a couple of years later falling into a whole different routine.
But that, for me, that's the excitement. That's what I love about it.
No, you're right.
Not feel like still no, it's an absolute no, it's no, exactly. But going back to what you said about that, creating routines straight away and feeling like you are living this new life. And also going back and visiting stuff at different times of day. I've touched on that. Can be very, very different, particularly if you're going to be moving into somewhere that you're living next to a school or opposite a school. What actually is that like at school time? You might, if you're coming home from work at that time, or you've got to go out at that time, is it going to be absolute carnage to get in and out of your home?
Then you can't get a parking space because it's all been taken up from all the parents picking up their kids.
Things like that. And also places can have such a different vibe at different times of day. So lots of people that I work with, if you're a single person walking home at night on your own, are you happy with that walk? Do you feel safe? Are you walking along main roads past shops, or actually would you be a bit afraid that you're going to be spending your life getting Ubers everywhere?
Also, or does it even have Uber in the first place?
Yes.
We don't. But it's also one of those where, as an adult, it's quite a difficult thing to make new friends. And I've lived in Horsham for 10 years now, and I still don't have any real local friends. I have one guy that I worked with when I did Panto a few years ago that lives around the corner. He's like my only local friend. Apart from that, I'm not the sort of person that would then just sort of go knocking on doors or joining local clubs to find some friends, because that's just not for me. But for some people, social life is so important that then it's trying to find similar interests, like local clubs. Like if there's, I don't know, a local gym where you can do a class, meet some people, make some friends. It's a whole different lifestyle that you need to prepare yourself for.
So true. I love the gym one, or joining a club, or joining like a local Pilates class, or paddle has become so like, go and join your local paddle. Because when I joined the gym in January, and now I have a whole new load of friends, and I call them my gym friends. So when I speak to my boyfriend, he's like, "What are you doing today?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going for coffee with Julia." He's like, "Who's Julia?" I'm like, "My gym friend."
Gym friends. Oh, I love that.
I know.
That's great.
So it's so easy to start making friends once you establish yourself in a community. I make friends walking the dog. Like, you take your dog out for a walk, you bump into the same local people in the park, and you start talking to them. Now I have my dog walking friends,
See, this is where we're very different.
You're like, I walk the dog with my head down, and they talk to me.
I can name you every single dog in the area. I know all of their names. I never look up and look at their faces, the owners. Oh, for some reason, I'm just only focused on the dog. I know every single local dog, what their names are, what their routines are, how old they are. Can't tell you the owners. No idea.
But like, there's Bali Fest.
So sometimes if I've seen people, like the dog walkers without their dogs, they'll come up and talk to me and I'm like, I've got no idea
who you are. That's so funny. But that happens everywhere, because I sometimes will walk my dog, and you talk to people and they're obviously more interested in the dog, which is totally fine. I would be too. But then I see them, without the dog, and they're like, oh, you're Bali's mum. Yes, that's me.
Yes, I am. And she's a very good girl.
Yep.
Is there any sort of other little bits of advice ahead of relocating?
I think maybe, I spoke a lot at the beginning of this is what I do for a living, and I help people every day. But I certainly don't think that what I do is impossible. Like, people could DIY it and do it themselves. Yeah, absolutely. And I think my biggest tip on that, when it comes to actually finding a property, is registering with your local estate agents. I know it sounds old school, but that is how you're going to build up a rapport, and that is how you're going to get access to off-market stuff, and how you're going to get access or gain access into properties first.
Yeah. Nice.
So that's probably my biggest tip, because that's what I spend my life doing.
Well, if you are listening to this or watching this, then we wish you all the best with your relocation, if that's what you're doing. And if you need any more advice, or if you've got any questions, then just pop yourself on the website, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.